There is something strange happening in the world right now, something subtle enough that most people haven't noticed it yet. It isn't a political movement, it isn't a social trend, and it isn't being reported in headlines. But if you look closely, you will see it everywhere. The most conscious, psychologically aware, and spiritually awake individuals are quietly withdrawing from society. They are not protesting. They are not rebelling. They are not trying to convince anyone of anything. They are simply stepping away. One by one, they are leaving social media, abandoning careers that once defined them, walking away from relationships that no longer feel authentic, and choosing solitude over constant interaction. To many people, this behavior looks like antisocial isolation or quiet burnout. But according to the insights of Carl Jung, something much deeper is happening. What appears to be disappearance is actually a stage in the process of psychological awakening. Jung called this phenomenon the necessary withdrawal. He understood that when a person becomes truly conscious, not just intellectually aware but deeply psychologically awake, participating in the unconscious patterns of society can become almost physically painful. Not metaphorically painful, literally painful to the psyche. Jung believed that society itself is built upon a foundation of collective unconsciousness. Most people move through life guided not by conscious awareness, but by shared assumptions, emotional projections, cultural roles, and inherited psychological patterns. These unconscious forces shape how people think, how they form relationships, how they judge others, and even how they see themselves. In Jung's view, the collective unconscious functions like an invisible operating system running beneath society. It maintains stability because most people participate in it without questioning it. Shared beliefs, shared fears, shared enemies, shared identities. These things hold society together. But the moment someone begins to awaken psychologically, they begin to see the hidden patterns that everyone else is unconsciously acting out. They start to notice the emotional projections in conversations, the hidden motives behind social behavior, the shadows people refuse to acknowledge in themselves. Suddenly, ordinary interactions begin to feel different. What once seemed normal now feels strangely artificial. This is the moment Jung described as the beginning of psychological isolation. The awakened person realizes that they are no longer perceiving reality in the same way as the people around them. It can feel like waking up in a room where everyone else is still asleep. Conversations that once felt engaging now feel repetitive and shallow. Social dynamics that once seemed natural now reveal themselves as unconscious psychological games. People project their fears onto others, defend identities they never questioned, and participate in collective conflicts without realizing the deeper psychological forces driving them. Once you see these patterns clearly, you cannot unsee them. And this realization creates a quiet but profound shift inside the psyche. The awakened person begins to feel alone even when surrounded by others. Carl Jung experienced this himself during his own confrontation with the unconscious. As his awareness deepened, he began to notice the unconscious projections and psychological defenses operating within social interactions. He found that ordinary conversations required him to pretend that he did not see what he clearly saw beneath the surface. To maintain normal social harmony, he would have to ignore the psychological dynamics unfolding right in front of him. Over time, this became exhausting, not because he disliked people, but because it required him to constantly suppress his awareness in order to fit into collective patterns. Jung described this as one of the burdens of consciousness. When you become aware of psychological truths that others are not ready to see, you often find yourself standing alone with that awareness. This is why many people undergoing deep psychological awakening begin to withdraw from the noise of society, not because they hate people, not because they believe they are superior, but because remaining fully immersed in unconscious environments begins to feel like betraying their own consciousness. Every social interaction begins to demand something from them. Pretend you don't see what you see. Pretend you don't understand what is happening. Pretend you are still playing the same psychological game. For a person who has begun the process of individuation, this becomes almost impossible. Individuation was Jung's term for the process of becoming one's authentic self. It is the psychological journey of integrating unconscious aspects of the psyche and developing a deeper, more complete sense of identity. But individuation requires something that society rarely encourages: self-confrontation. To individuate, a person must face their shadow, the hidden aspects of their personality that they once denied or projected onto others. They must recognize their own capacity for anger, selfishness, jealousy, and darkness. This process is not comfortable, but it leads to psychological maturity. Once someone has integrated their own shadow, they begin to recognize shadow projections everywhere in the world around them. They begin to see how groups blame outsiders for problems that originate within themselves. They notice how political conflicts often involve two sides projecting their unconscious fears and anger onto each other. They recognize how social media outrage frequently reflects unresolved shadow material seeking targets. Jung referred to this phenomenon as the projection of the shadow. The shadow contains everything a person refuses to acknowledge about themselves, and instead of confronting it internally, people project it outward, onto others. For someone who has already faced their own shadow, watching this dynamic play out on a societal scale can be deeply disturbing. It begins to feel like witnessing a collective psychological illusion. Arguments that once seemed meaningful now reveal themselves as battles between unconscious projections. Entire social movements can appear to be fueled by shadow material seeking expression. This realization does not make the awakened person arrogant. It makes them quiet. Because once you recognize how powerful unconscious forces are, you understand that most people are not acting intentionally. They are being driven by psychological patterns they have never examined. Another reason awakened individuals begin to withdraw from society is the collapse of the persona. In Jungian psychology, the persona is the social mask we wear in order to function in the world. It is the identity we present to others, the professional role, the polite personality, the socially acceptable version of ourselves. Most people identify strongly with their persona because it allows them to belong within society. But during individuation, something profound happens. The authentic self begins to emerge behind the mask, and once someone has experienced that deeper authenticity, maintaining the persona becomes extremely difficult. Social environments often require people to perform their personas constantly. At work, people are expected to behave according to professional roles. In social circles, people often repeat familiar identities and opinions to maintain belonging. Even on social media, individuals construct carefully curated personas designed to gain approval and validation. But when someone has touched their authentic self, performing these roles begins to feel deeply unnatural. It can feel like acting in a play where the character no longer reflects who you truly are. This creates a psychological tension that many awakened individuals struggle to resolve. On one hand, society continues to expect persona performance. On the other hand, the authentic self refuses to hide behind masks anymore. The result is often withdrawal. Instead of constantly performing identities that feel false, the individual chooses to step away from environments that demand them. Jung observed that this stage of withdrawal is not a failure of social adaptation. It is part of an archetypal process. Throughout human history, individuals undergoing profound psychological transformation have entered periods of solitude. Jung associated this stage with the archetype of the hermit. The hermit archetype represents the phase in which a person retreats from external distractions in order to confront inner truths. In mythology and spiritual traditions across cultures, this stage appears repeatedly. The seeker withdraws into the desert, the forest, the mountains, or the monastery. From the outside, it appears as disappearance, but psychologically, it is a time of deep transformation. Solitude allows the psyche to integrate what society constantly fragments. When someone remains immersed in social environments, they are constantly responding to external expectations, emotional influences, and collective pressures. Solitude creates a different psychological space. It allows a person to hear their own inner voice without interference. It allows unconscious material to surface without being immediately suppressed by social roles. It allows the self to reorganize itself around authenticity rather than approval. This is why many awakened individuals feel a powerful pull towards solitude or nature. It is not escapism. It is a psychological instinct. The psyche recognizes that transformation requires space. In nature, away from constant social stimulation, people often rediscover a sense of psychological balance. Their energy returns. Their thoughts become clearer. Their emotional awareness deepens. Jung himself experienced this during the years he spent at Bollingen Tower, a stone retreat he built near Lake Zurich. There, away from the demands of professional life and social expectations, he engaged in deep reflection and creative work. Bollingen was not an escape from life. It was a place where Jung could explore the depths of the psyche without interference from collective pressures. But Jung emphasized that withdrawal is not meant to be permanent. The hermit phase is a stage of transformation, not the final destination. Once a person has integrated their inner discoveries, they often return to society, but in a different way. They no longer seek validation from the collective. They no longer feel compelled to conform to unconscious patterns. Instead, they engage with the world from a place of psychological independence. Jung noticed that individuals who completed the individuation process often returned to society in subtle but meaningful roles. They became artists expressing deeper truths through creativity. They became teachers guiding others through psychological awakening. They became healers helping individuals confront their own shadows. They became writers, thinkers, and mentors offering insights that could only emerge from deep inner work. Interestingly, these individuals rarely return to the mainstream center of society. Instead, they exist on the margins, in what Jung described as the psychological borderlands. They participate in the world without being absorbed by it. They maintain their consciousness while interacting with others who are ready for deeper understanding. From the outside, it may appear that conscious individuals are disappearing, but from a psychological perspective, something else is happening. They are relocating their presence. Instead of participating in unconscious systems, they are building small pockets of awareness. Instead of competing for attention in mass culture, they are quietly creating spaces for authentic conversation and inner exploration. Jung believed that psychological evolution rarely happens through mass movements. It begins with individuals who undergo transformation first. These individuals become pioneers of consciousness. They step away from collective patterns, not to reject humanity, but to explore deeper possibilities for human awareness. What looks like withdrawal is actually preparation. In solitude, the psyche develops insights that could never emerge within the noise of collective life. In silence, people rediscover truths about themselves and about human nature, and when they eventually share those insights, they offer something far more valuable than conformity. They offer clarity. If you have felt the urge to withdraw from the chaos of modern society, Jung would suggest that you examine that impulse carefully. It may not be a sign of weakness. It may not be depression or burnout. It could be the psyche recognizing that it needs distance in order to grow. The journey of individuation often begins with a quiet turning inward. It requires courage to step away from familiar patterns and face the deeper layers of the self. But that journey also carries a promise. The more you integrate your shadow, the more authentic your life becomes. The more you listen to your inner voice, the less dependent you become on external approval. And the more conscious you become, the more capable you are of contributing something meaningful to the world. The awakened are not disappearing because they reject humanity. They are disappearing because they are searching for truth beyond the illusions of the collective. They are stepping away from noise in order to hear something deeper. And in that silence, they are discovering the kind of consciousness that can eventually transform not just individual lives, but the future of human awareness itself. If Jung was right, what we are witnessing today is not a mass withdrawal from society. It is the early stage of a psychological evolution. The pioneers are quietly leaving the unconscious center of culture and exploring new territories of consciousness. And when they return, they will not return as followers of the collective mind. They will return as individuals who have learned how to live with awareness, authenticity, and depth in a world that desperately needs it. If this message resonated with something deep inside you, take it as a sign that your journey of awareness has already begun. The path of individuation is not easy. It often feels lonely, misunderstood, and uncertain, but it is also the path that leads to the most authentic version of yourself. Carl Jung believed that the individuals who dare to explore the depths of their own psyche become the ones who quietly reshape the future of human consciousness. They are not loud, they are not seeking attention, but their awareness changes the world in ways that are often invisible. If you are someone who feels this pull toward deeper understanding, toward psychological truth, toward exploring the hidden layers of the mind, then you are exactly where you need to be. And if you want to continue exploring the profound ideas of Carl Jung, shadow work, individuation, and the deeper mysteries of the human psyche, make sure to subscribe to Deep Psyche. Also take a moment to like this video. It helps this message reach others who may be going through the same awakening, but feel like they are alone in it. Because the truth is, you are not alone. There are many others quietly walking this same path of consciousness, and together we are exploring the deeper layers of the human mind. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you in the next video.